I don't think we've got any apologies, and we've got a full house here today. Is there any declarations of interest at all?
Yep. I work for a housing association in my place of Metropolitan. Small amount of time.
Thank you very much. Notes as well. So notes from the previous explain the various options available. So we're sort of better briefed and informed about any recommendations we make to have on that. Alright, so if I just go through very, very briefly the notes from the last meeting. So any comments or questions on page 1, agenda item 1.8? And again, the next page 2. That's fantastic. So if I can go to the next item of business, which is our main item, the draft of the plan for our FutureWimbledon masterplan consultation today. I'll ask Sarah to briefly introduce the paper, and then why don't we take some comments, reflections, and of course questions afterwards, and do it in 2 slides. Sarah, you ready?
Thank you, Chair. This is an update. This is the main item for tonight's agenda. I should say as well, it's an item for discussion. It's not for decision. It's not to go on to cabinet at this stage. So there will be future meetings where the information that you see will go on for future decisions, but this isn't one of them. This really summarises the bulk of the work that we've done, mainly around the local plan. And the first part of the report concentrates very much on how we did the consultation, what we did, what kind of meetings we attended, what kind of correspondence we sent out, and also a bit later on in the report, around pages 9 to 11, focuses on what we felt worked quite well and what we felt maybe is something that we would repeat a bit less. This kind of information, as you're aware, councillors, will inform the council's statement of community involvement, and that hopefully will be published later this summer for consultation. I won't go through the details of this report in great detail because you've received it, and you can please don't hesitate to ask me any questions about it. The bulk of the next stage of the report focuses on the local plan consultations. I should say for both local plan and FutureWimbledon master plan, all of the responses we've received are online. So if anyone wants to go back to a particular response and read it, they're all up on the council's website now. We will be doing something very similar to deal with the 700 responses for the FutureWimbledon master plan. But given there's a few hundred responses for the local plan and another 700 for FutureWimbledon, we'll come back to you in June, in the early June meeting, with more details on the FutureWimbledon responses. The few things I really would like to point out is some of the things about what worked well in the consultation and what didn't. One of the things that I think worked really well was we had some focus groups. I particularly like to point out some of the focus groups we did with children and young people. We held one in Morden with 6 different primary schools, attendees sort of 10, 11 years old. We held some with businesses. We held quite a few focus groups, and we met community groups individually as well. And those meetings really worked really well. We got some really interesting feedback from them. You'll see a picture, for example, of one of the school children groups prepared about Morden, and there's a bigger report on that particular workshop. But it just goes to show that spending a few hours just engaging directly with something can really, really be effective. I have to say it was definitely more effective when it was a particular issue or a particular geographic area. So for the school children, we picked Morden Regeneration. Trying to engage on the whole borough-wide local plan is just such, even for the meetings we're invited to, it's such a broad church, it's such a mammoth extent, it's often not as effective. Drop-in sessions, they varied from being quite effective to surprisingly quiet. So we held quite a few drop-in sessions around the Southern Link consultation. You may recall that Transport for London was consulting on the Southern Link, which is the proposed rapid transit link between ourselves and Sutton. Transport for London will be producing their own consultation report from their 6,000 responses. They said they'd do it this month, and when they put it up online, I'll send you the link, and we can discuss it at a future meeting. So we held a number of drop-in sessions with them. The ones that worked really well, there were places like Morton Station, where it's undercover, because this was November and December after all, where people were passing through, but it was a Saturday, so they weren't necessarily all going to work, so they could spend a bit of time chatting through issues. We got a lot of people approaching us about Morton regeneration at the same time. And that works, I think, particularly well. It was very, very busy for almost like 4 hours we were there. Conversely, it wasn't, I was expecting Wimbledon then to be about the same. It wasn't as well attended, I don't think. It was also a Saturday. I think one of the issues there is that Wimbledon Station has 2 entrances rather than 1. So when you come off the train or the tube or the tram, you can go out by Centre Court. So you don't necessarily get all the footfall. And it was just maybe a day that people weren't stopping as much. Wimbledon Library as well, we thought that would be exceptionally busy. And indeed, on the Thursday afternoon when we were there, the library itself was exceptionally busy. But although we had a stand and displays, there weren't that many people popping over to see us, even though we were right in front of the library. So I think our message about if we're to repeat drop-in sessions is it has to be somewhere that really you capture a very, very high footfall. I think probably in the future we might try somewhere like Centre Court Shopping Centre or somewhere where there's kind of one entrance and exit and that aren't too dispersed.
Sort of Safe Centre, maybe?
Yes, exactly. There's a big space at the bottom of there. It'll be worth trying. We held a few in other parts of the borough as well. There's one in Merton Parish Centre that was quite quiet. But the full consultation report will come out with more details for exactly how many people attended. Community meetings, I mean, the best way of people hearing about something is from their neighbours and from their friends and from people they know. Getting the official letter or email from the council, it's a start maybe, but it's nothing more effective than someone saying, have you heard about this? Even if it's a positive or negative light, at least the information is being passed on. And that is absolutely invaluable. It's huge thanks to all the people who invited us to all the meetings and who arranged all the meetings for us. It really is, peer-to-peer communication is absolutely the most effective way of getting the message across by a long, long way. We attended a good spread of meetings, quite a lot on the FutureWimbledon masterplan, which we'll talk about in June in more detail. Quite a fair few of invitations we received around Morden, community groups around Morden. But I think it probably reflects the amount of activity proposed for those areas. So, for example, Rains Park has always been very well attended group, very big community event, but we're not proposing masses of change in Rains Park with Crossrail 2 for the foreseeable future. So this time we didn't get lots and lots of invitations from the Rains Park area, which is to be expected given the level of proposals in the plan. So without wanting to spend too long talking to you all, just in summary then, the next stage really is a real précis of just the number of comments we've received and the kind of very basic flavour of them. Now obviously we'll be spending the next 3 or 4 months analysing these in much more detail. So what you'll receive at future meetings is, for example, on the sites, you'll receive a paper with the comments received on a particular site and all the sort of research and evidence that relates to that particular site, so in a much more focused kind of way. We got 240 respondents, but they raised somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 different issues. So it's not just one response equals one response, it's what people say in the response, it's the value of the contribution. And that doesn't matter how long or how short it is, it's really the actual content is so key. So, understandably, it's taken a huge amount of time to analyse. I point briefly to the graph on page 14, which appears to, with a pie chart, which appears at first glance to say very little. It shows that people said stuff about everything. But that's really interesting when you think about other consultation responses. In my experience of planning, people focus on a few key areas, design being one, transport and traffic and parking being another. But this goes to show that the respondents to the local plan really did touch on all the issues and gave us a really broad range of issues that we now have to delve into to best advise yourselves as councillors of the next steps. Just lastly to say that we got obviously a lot of responses on sites. The particular sites on page 21 where we got the most responses are set out in the graph, but again what we'll do is we'll be preparing site by site summaries of those, and also to say that we're aware of within the FutureWimbledon master plan comments that even if people didn't say so, sometimes they've commented on a site that's in the local plan, so we're making sure that we capture those as well as part of the local plan, and we'll be writing back to people to let them know that we think that their comments are also relevant to the local plan. A few other sites were suggested for redevelopment. Centre Court Shopping Centre was one of them. Abbey Wall Works, which is south of High Path, was another. The Asda store is actually a mistake, so please ignore that, and if that comes back, I'll let you know. And a very small patch of Boundary Business Court off Church Road was also recommended for redevelopment. If I could just summarise, Chair, by talking about the next steps. Page 22 shows that there's lots of work underway that will inform the plan. You'll be aware of things like open space and play space that I think I've emailed all councillors about. That research will be concluding in the next couple of months. We'll bring back that to you in public, make sure it's published online.
Sorry, can I just check that we're on the same page? I've got page
It's page
20. Sorry, 22 in big letters. I've got 20 in little letters.
That's all right.
That's fine.
Thank you.
20 or...
Page 20, small print.
Small print page.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a list of
the big print.
Big
Yes.
print counts the cover page and
There's no big print on this copy.
neither have I.
Okay.
The other one's about that.
Oh, that's another. There's a list of research on page 20 of 30, if that's the page number we're looking at, which we'll come back to you on. There's some key pieces that will inform, especially the site-specific work. And also, finally, to say that the London Plan hearings are still ongoing. We've discussed this before. The Mayor's London Plan is currently being revised. The planning inspectors who are holding the hearings have started in January and they'll finish in May. So they've had the hearings on housing. As you're aware, Merton's housing target is proposed to change quite a lot. They're moving on, I think, to economic development quite soon. And they'll conclude in May with a final report in July. Obviously, the London Plan is part of the statutory plan for all London boroughs, and what that plan finally says will have a bearing on what Merton and other boroughs will need to be doing. And so we'll report back after the July meeting, which I think our next meeting is September. The Chair, I'm happy to take questions.
Brilliant, thank you. I know Najib had a question in the comment. Does anyone else have a question? Look, cool. So you go, Najib, and then...
Okay. Thank you very much. Two questions on the master plan. The first one's really to do with the heights of the buildings. I understand that you say this is just a guide, it's not policy, and it's going to go through the planning committee and everything. But the reason why I asked that question is that I was fortunate enough to chair the design review panel, which Linda kindly asked me to do. And at that meeting, 2 or 3 applicants came in with very high stories of buildings. So one of the questions asked was, why are you going above the 8 stories? And they went back and said, it's because the master plan says we should, or we can do. So I think Tony at that time was one of the architects. Said, well, you do realise that's just a guide, and it's not, you shouldn't be doing that. They said, well, that's what the master plan is telling us to do, and that's what we're doing. So that was one of my questions. The second question is that in your summary of issues, you say that there's a high demand for lots of businesses. Where has that come from? That you require that there should be a lot more businesses coming into Wimbledon. I did see it somewhere. Page 25 of 30 says Wimbledon needs more large businesses. So those are the two questions I'd like to.
Yes, if I can take the second one first. This is a summary of a very, very summarised summary of the 700 responses that we've received. And so I can't point to the exact one of those 700 responses that has pointed to the business issue. We can go through our table and pull out the ones that relate to businesses and send them to you, but you will be receiving that information in June.
On that
June.
point,
In
June committee.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
on that point, is it fair to say, just the wider questions on these tables, is it fair to say that because there is still further work to do looking at those responses, and therefore there's the weighting, understanding about sort of particular focus and priorities may not have been done yet, because you need to go through all that data, but these are just generalised responses for our own information and understand what the issues are coming up.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair, that's exactly right. They aren't weighted, they aren't scored, or as you can see there are no numbers against them. So it doesn't say, for example, how many people said more public spaces or don't want Wimbledon to become a business district or any of the other responses. So that kind of more detailed analysis will be in June. But Councillor, for the purpose of your question about businesses, I couldn't point to exactly who said it, but it's part of the responses to the master plan rather than something as officers that we're recommending. To answer your first question, I'd expect that anybody wanting to achieve anything from their planning proposals will find something in any plan that they will point to that serves their ends. I think it's very risky for any applicant to take a draft of anything and start saying, this is what we're going to do. It's very clearly a draft. And not only is it a draft, it's draft guidance. And not only is it draft guidance, there's been 700 responses on it. So the advice on all planning policy documents, which should also apply to guidance, is if it's still in draft and lots of people have responded to the draft, it's very, very risky to be trying to use that as a material consideration to take it through planning. In fact, the existing adopted policies would clearly override that situation. So I understand that people will always do that, and applicants will always do that, but the existing adopted policies would override that situation.
Linda, did anyone else want to ask a question? Linda?
I just wanted to, Crossrail Orbit 2 is going to obviously be a massive impact if it happens. What's the latest situation on that?
Crossrail 2, the last announcement was, I'm going to get my dates wrong here, but it was in the autumn, and the proposal is that the next autumn statement will contain some information on Crossrail 2. That was at the end of last year. You may be aware that over the past few years there was a big review of funding Crossrail 2, and the government had the funding issues independently checked. And there is due to be a statement, due to be matters in the autumn statement on Crossrail 2. There have been a lot of macroeconomic events happening, so whether that will happen, I couldn't tell you. One thing I have noticed is we haven't got extensive comments from Crossrail 2 that I'm aware of on the local plan, and we will be asking for more details from them, because it's very difficult to plan for a borough like Wimbledon, or any borough affected by Merton, or any borough affected by Crossrail 2, without a clear statement of what might be happening.
Second question really was, I'm obviously very worried about the housing targets. Can I ask what case Merton actually put to the Mayor about the London requirement for us? Can you just refresh my memory on what it was they were expecting us to do, first of all? It was about doubling, wasn't it?
Tripling.
Tripling.
Merton's current housing target is 411 homes per year. One of the lowest in London, and mainly because Merton is a very green borough and land ownership is incredibly fragmented. So it's growing up over the Victorian era, over the interwar suburban era, and it's largely built up. Lots of people own little bits of land. It's not a borough with large single sites that can easily and cost effectively be redeveloped. And it's, the target's bounced around the late 300s, early 400s for 10 years now. And to inform the target, each mayor, each London plan will do a strategic housing and land availability assessment and a market assessment. How much land is there and who's going to build on it, basically. And there is a big drive at a government level for more homes. Part of solving the housing crisis is seen to be at national government level to build more homes. There's also fiscal initiatives like Help to Buy to incentivise the ownership and building of homes. At the mayor's level, he has been asked by the Secretary of State to make sure that London's housing delivery rises to about 65, 72,000 homes per year. Currently, it's around 30,000 that get built every year, on average. So Merton's target has gone up to, proposed in the draft London plan to go up from 411 homes per year to 1,328 homes a year. And yeah, it's a huge percentage rise. To be honest, I don't think it's deliverable. I don't think there are the sites. I don't think that the market is currently interested. We're not in the boom years. I think it would be a real struggle. We've never done it before. In the light of that, we are a pro-growth borough. We're exploring the regeneration of Morden. We're exploring estate regeneration. We're exploring design, high design quality and more homes to try and make sure that our residents have somewhere to live. But even with all of that, I don't think we're going to achieve that target. All of Outer London objected to the Mayor's London plan because they have similar target rises. So we work together with the other boroughs in South London, including Richmond and Sutton and Kingston ourselves, and West London having alliance and etc. to object to these target rises. And we attended the hearings which took place in January and February. Now we won't know the results of those until July. We're particularly concerned about the small sites. The large sites, the proportion is fairly calculated, we feel, but we're particularly concerned about the amount of development proposed on small sites. When we know the outcome of the hearing, then we will of course let you know.
But that does include conversions, doesn't it?
It does include, small sites includes anything under 25.
One of the big problems I would say, certainly from the Mitcham end, is that when you actually look at the conversions across the borough, it's all in the east side of the borough, and it's absolutely changing the whole character. And when you have, say, for example, a road like Park Avenue, Nywall, where there are illegal conversions, but when you actually look at the legal conversions and you've got, say, a street with about 100 houses in it and 25 of them then become converted, it completely changes the nature of that. And we've already talked about the HMO issue, but when the issue was being discussed about the quota, was there any discussion around the unfairness of what's happening in terms of those conversions?
Specifically on conversions, I don't think so. Generally, discussion on small sites in general. I will say that at the hearings, I think Catherine and I felt that the community groups were particularly strong on these issues because as planners we can give the very technical sides and it's all a bit dry, quite frankly. But round the table there is a representation from anyone who's responded to the London plan, and many of the civic societies and community groups had responded on those issues. And they were very eloquent in explaining how, although there is a need for new homes, there has to be a balance with design quality and the character of an area and local immunity. The Mayor's London plan says that character needs to evolve and grow, and of course in London that happens all the time. But the community groups were particularly eloquent, I certainly felt, about summarising those issues for the inspectors. So I'm very hopeful on small sites that there will be a review of that approach. But I'm afraid we can't.
And regulation, which is seriously lacking. I mean, it's just a scandal, really, what's going on in the private sector.
Yeah, as you're aware of the housing licensing, which is a scandal.
We'll tackle that in the next meeting.
I think it's interesting the huge range of issues that have been covered in here. I think it's wonderful actually, because it does mean it's almost like taking a fresh look at what you do and determining how you're going to actually make some really serious changes in the way you operate.
I was really pleased with the range of
Yes,
responses.
fantastic.
Often it's just on one or two issues.
Yeah.
but also how, because we've got the reviewing the community involvement plan as well, how that would all link together.
Yeah.
It's really exciting as well.
Yeah.
That's a perfect sort of segue into what I wanted to ask actually. I guess it's a few questions, but it's under the same theme. You said the Sutton Link consultation you thought had 6,000 responses, which is quite a lot more than what we got.
Yeah.
So in sort of in light of that, and there were a few things in here. So for example, there were a lot of young people that responded. I'm not sure, it's not clear whether there was any kind of outreach to disability groups or people with disabilities, for example, because the documents are quite sort of, they're not necessarily very accessible for a lot of people. So are you kind of happy with the reach that you got in that respect? And certainly I'm councillor for West Barnes. I know you said that it was sort of expected to some degree that Rains Park and that kind of part of the borough would have had fewer responses. Do you think there's a case for a bit more outreach there? Because I know obviously I get sort of things about heights of buildings and all that kind of stuff from my residents. So I do know that it's a concern out there as well. So do you think there's a case for that? And finally, sort of linked to that, I know there were responses received from, I think, Sutton and Lambeth Council, but there didn't seem to be anything from Kingston, which again sort of butts up against me. Was there a kind of reason for that we're aware of, or is it just there wasn't anything particularly they wanted to say? Or,
If I could, again,
sorry, that's a lot.
yeah, you're right. If I could again answer your questions in reverse order. I think with Kingston, I mean, we're in dialogue with our neighbouring councils pretty much weekly, and I think they wanted to chat a bit about be aware of the sites on near the border and be aware of the issues. But when pushed, they said, "Oh, yeah, the plan seems fine. Basically, we'll get back to you if there was any problems." I think in prioritising their workload, they prioritised the stuff that they saw was problematic, which wasn't Merton's plan. Having said that, we have to do a statement of common ground with lots of different bodies, and that will be prepared over the course of this year. So we will, even though they haven't responded, we'll have to go back to Kingston and say, look, here's a map of everything within half a kilometre of your boundary. Are you happy with this? Are you happy with the rest of the plan? And if the answer is yes, which I expect it will be, carry on. Sorry if I wasn't clear about the Rains Park West Barnes issue. I think I was reflecting that historically that area has been a hugely strong community and a lot of very well organised with in particular with Rains Park, with the Rains Park Association. Their community forum is always incredibly well attended, and usually, therefore, if there's activities going on in the area, we're usually very heavily involved because they're great at inviting us. And this time, I don't think it's that they haven't invited us. I think that there's just not the same level of activity is proposed for, say, Wimbledon or Morden. Therefore, it's been relatively quieter than those two areas. Having said that, as you can see in the report, we have had responses from lots of community groups in that area. You asked about the Sutton Link. The Sutton Link consultation got 6,000 responses, which is across the two boroughs and across London. So I know that the consultation report will have a map of what they, where they know where people have given their postcodes. They have mapped those responses, which come, frankly, from a huge swathe of Croydon as well. Also, I'd reflect that consultation is very straightforward. You pick 3 routes and you pick 2 modes of transport, and that's it. It's much more simple than something that's about an inch thick and contains policies and sites and all sorts of things. So therefore, it's much easier to respond to, and you didn't get the same effect that sometimes we have where people started answering a response and then just tailed off on surveys. So I think that's the reason for the high responses. Sorry,
there was a couple of it's just sort of sitting under that. There's a low response rate from the young people, and I wonder if there was more a kind of reflection from you as to whether there could have been more kind of outreach to young people. And similarly, the overall accessibility of the document was there. It probably wasn't that accessible for people with certain disabilities and things like that. Was there any kind of conscious outreach to kind of get around that, or was that just not part of what you did, or there wasn't a resource or whatever?
On young people, we've recognised this. I think we've said it at various meetings right across the board. When people are able to, feel comfortable with giving us their ages, people tend to be I'll be frank, north of 50 who are responding to this. We get very little response usually between the ages of 16 and say about 40. All sorts of reasons, but it's a tough gig. It's a big, complex document written in sometimes very technical language, which isn't really. You might care about the issues within it, but to wade through it, it can be quite tricky. And people are extremely busy. Hence, during the outreach to the schools, we're going to rerun this again with sort of youth groups, which is why we spoke to Councillor Kelly Braunt, who deals with not just not in education, but on young people in general, so up into the 20s as well. We've advised to steer clear of the summer for that, or the summer months when people's A-levels and things are on, and university exams. But we're working with our sort of youth and children's service to run a similar event, or a similar series of issues sometime when it lies best. I say with these in, we'll try and capture them in September, but if we could get in after A-levels but before everyone left, I think we'd be doing well. On issues of people with disabilities, we didn't do masses to reach out to people who would need to access the plan because it's web accessible with the reader and things like that. But we have a focus group that focuses particularly on Morden, which is a group of groups with variety of disabilities. And they're particularly interested in the regeneration of Morden and advising on that. And so it's that group often that feeds into key issues on this particular thing. We're also very conscious of the design of public realm, where we get quite a lot of feedback about shared spaces, and that's something we'll have to tighten up in this particular plan, and also in the council's transport strategy that's just been published for consultation.
Thank you. Dennis has got a question. Before it's gone to Dennis, just picking up on Carl's point about and the group of disabled users. Was there a particular favour or feedback they gave?
I can't recall. I'll be honest, I can't recall off the top of my head. It would be unfair to try and summarise something I can't remember. I suggest councillors that I send something on to and publish it as part of the notes of this meeting. Yeah, I think it's online, but I can.
I think maybe drawing attention to that would be useful. Apologies for putting you on the spot.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's not on the spot at all.
Cool. Dennis.
It's more for your comment. I mean, on pages 24, 25, now I've red dotted 4 of them about housing. Now, I don't know how other people read all these consultations, but I think that a lot of people in different issues, you can get someone who hates it, someone who loves it, and you have a whole ray in the middle. But with housing issues, I've always noticed, and I'm being parochial here because I ask questions around Morden, not around the rest of the borough, but I find it's much more polarised, where they're out either on one, completely out on one side, or completely out on the other. And I find it hard to understand how you bring the two together, because if we're going to get in anywhere near the targets for housing of all kinds, we either have to go upwards to protect our green spaces, or we have to go denser to stay going up. And you're going to have people who either love that idea or hate that idea. But whichever we do, I've noticed in my working life, when I'm doing a development, small one, I don't do massive things, I do small ones, we have to also redo the services from the road. Water, gas and so on have to be all renewed from the road. Whereas if we're going in for all this, we can't just rely on everything in the road being up to standard, because some of it can be decades and decades old, and it'd be totally hopeless to deal with all the new infrastructure that we're putting in. Don't you think that alone, we're putting in all new infrastructure and roads all around the areas, is going to cause chaos and is going to be mind-numbingly expensive? So not only are we sort of going up or going dense or both, we're also upsetting the whole road system while we're doing it, because we have to do that to make sure that the people who move into all these new dwellings have got the services they're entitled to expect.
On the issue of infrastructure, such as utilities, we're doing a lot of work with the infrastructure providers. So Thames Water is the biggest. We've also got Sutton and East Surrey in this borough. And part of that is the overall infrastructure needs assessment. And they're key. So in the last plan, for example, Thames Water looked at the overall plan, and they also went through each individual site and area of growth and made an assessment of whether their services, their water and wastewater services, were fine to cope with new development, or would require an upgrade to be funded by the new development. And the other point I would reflect on is that this is not an instant plan. This is a 15-year long-term plan. So it won't be a series of things happening straight away. And the final point on that would be, although the London plan has proposed a very high housing target, as you know, we've objected to it, as is most of Outer London, and we hope that we'll be able to work with this to get it to something that's ambitious. So there will be new homes for people coming through in the future, because there's no doubt that there is, you know, a desperate need for new homes, especially affordable homes in this borough and most of London. But also that the target will end up being something that's both ambitious but a bit more realistic. So that's what we're trying to work towards.
Just one question. You said 15 years. I don't think that's anywhere near long enough, to be honest. Probably look further ahead than that. But I'll be gone by then, so it doesn't matter.
Thank you. Two questions, Tara.
Yeah.
One's almost following on from what Dan said, that in any regeneration master plan, one of the things that changes dramatically is the movement patterns of transport, of crowds, even both public and private transport. And I feel that the master plan hasn't really looked into that, because that will be a major problem, both during the construction stage, which might be 20 years, and the final stage as well, because once it's all happened, the movements may be horribly wrong. And I feel that needs to be looked at in more detail in this plan. And secondly, the question is not related to that, it's a bit different. There have been a lot of good contributions from societies like the Wimbledon Society, Friends of Wimbledon Town Centre, and I think Weira. Have their contributions and sort of concerns been taken into consideration here? Or will they be taken into consideration?
Will be, yeah.
Yes.
On the master plan, to answer for this time, to answer the first question first, on the travel and transport, the views that you've just said there, Najib, reflect the views that we've received from other respondents as well. So you're certainly, you know, this is an ongoing view about the transport and travel within Wimbledon, not just to Wimbledon. So this is something we'll be looking at seriously, as to what we can achieve by a master plan that is very important, but is also guidance rather than pure policy. And the second point is, yes, I mean, the contributions from the groups, many of which are here tonight, we couldn't do this work without them. They're incredibly valuable. They're up online in full for everyone to read their contributions and the 695 others. And that is something that, of course, we'll be taking into consideration as the plan goes forward. We're contemplating further consultation of the plan, given the sheer volume of responses received. But as I said, we'll come back to you in June with that.
Are there any further questions at all? Comments, reflections?
Quick clarification. It seems like there's a lot coming back in the 6th of June. Is it going to be possible to get the papers to us a bit more in that perhaps than we normally would? Just because it sounds like there's a lot of detail that will be coming through.
That's a good point. So I think, just to clarify, on the 6th of June we've got the HMO paper, which goes through various options there, similar to what we did for the betting shops, in the sense of comparative analysis of what else is going on in the country, and then again some various options there. We've got a further stock take of this now that the responses will be analysed, and again we will have and then an update from the London, or a closer update from the London plan, in a sense of where we're at, because committee hearings should have finished around May, with a report coming in July time, and again that impacts further on us. And then I think then it will be a matter for the committee to recommend or instruct officers to then put the groundwork to recommend to Cabinet later on about doing further consultation on a particular area. Does that sound?
Yes, I think that the next recommendation on the local plan will be this September committee of the Borough Plan Advisory Committee. But June's meeting, as the Chair rightly said, will focus on the houses of multiple occupation paper and the FutureWimbledon master plan. And any other but we're unlikely to be making recommendations on the local plan. So if we can get any papers to you in advance, and I'm probably thinking the houses of multiple occupation one would be useful because we could publish that online early and send it to you in advance. Anything we can get on FutureWimbledon we would publish in advance, but I'm not promising that due to the sheer volume of work.
Yeah, of course.
And also anything on the community involvement we can send around and publish. It can go around by email and be published online if you feel that that's appropriate. If it doesn't require wider discussion.
And then that would be fantastic, but also really encourage circulation of the HMO paper for local views as well. It'd be really, really interesting to now galvanise people's thoughts and minds around strategic planning. It'd be really great to galvanise that further. And I know the work that you and your group has done on that as well is very good. So you've probably got a ready-made email list.
Yeah, sure.
And I know Linda as well, locally done as well. Cool. Any further questions? Linda?
Yeah, can I?
Joanne.
Yeah, Tara. Sorry if I might have missed it when you talked about it earlier. But the housing target from Mayor of London, and you said we've appealed against that. Is there a date when the appeals like to be heard? I mean, when will we know whether they were going to sort of consider it or just, say, sorry, that's your target?
The inspectors who are independent of the mayor are examining the plan at the moment. The housing hearings were held in January and February, I think, weren't they? Inspectors stay very poker-faced when they're listening to all the responses, so even though we attended the hearings, I have no sense of which way they were going. On their current timetable, they're due to report in July. So and they're sticking to their hearing timetables quite successfully at this stage. So we should find out in July what the inspectors are telling the mayor to do, and then it will be between the Secretary of State and the mayor as to what happens over the course of the few months after that. I should say though that if we have a high housing target, it doesn't necessarily mean that overnight everything changes. It will be something that we will work on, and also a target is a target. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get 300% more planning applications or sites or anything like that. So I do believe we can work successfully on this, but July will be the earliest.
Okay.
The number of planning applications that are coming through have been very, very low.
Yes,
We've been holding
they have
not sure what's going on.
across the UK.
Well, I think it's probably reflecting events later on this month and understanding where the market's going to go.
Yeah, I think it is.
So Dennis,
Yeah, there's only one more quick comment. On all the pages, there's 15, 16 and so on. Where you give the numbers of respondents, I noticed that there were a much lower amount of comments on climate change and pollution. And I would have thought that would be much higher in people's consciousness, unless I've got the figures wrong.
I don't think you have, Councillor. I think that they just this time that there were a lower number of comments that were specifically targeted towards those policies. The only thing I would reflect on as well is that sometimes people refer to we might have counted their comments under another area, but they have cited the importance of climate change in general, or the need to tackle climate change, or the need to mitigate the impacts. But they're talking about the flooding policy, for example.
And
so on those,
obviously the air policy.
yeah.
But I find, because I talk to residents in my area, as I say, but this would hold up for every area in London. I think the general public on the ground are much more concerned, seem much more concerned about these policies and people high up who can actually make a difference and make these policies happen. I mean, that's just a comment. I don't have to comment back.
Just got one more thing really. You were saying that the local plan itself is likely to be more September time.
Focused mainly on the substantial body, but yes.
Yeah, because one of the things that I think as a group member is that, I mean, we're all, if you're on the kind of planning, then you're linked up with design review and borough plan, and it all becomes very much there's an area that you're indulging in. But these really are full group issues. And would there be a possibility to have full briefings to the main groups? Really?
Absolutely.
Well, I just feel it's just so important, really, isn't it?
No, you're right, and that's actually something Tara and I were talking earlier on today about how we do that. It's particularly when we talk about regeneration and the various steps that need to go through before that before it happens. Why don't we take that away and put something together in terms for the next meeting, and then we can go from there, or at least circulate through our email beforehand.
Or what you could do is, instead of having separate group meetings for it, you could actually have an early council meeting night, and
that would be my preference.
And have a full briefing.
Yeah.
Then that means everybody's engaged, and we will then get feedback from colleagues about what they want us to. I mean, otherwise you feel kind of like you're a bit isolated on this topic, when it should be a bit more inclusive, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's great, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Unless there's anything else, I'll call this meeting to the end.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Were there any comments from the public at all?
Yes.
First, just to say, obviously we've got recording going on. If you're happy for that to record your comments, do continue. If you're not, then obviously wait.
They can't see me.
Okay,
Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting us sit in. We're all people from the community. We're very interested and involved in the Future Wimbledon.
Sorry, also, it may be worth if you would introduce yourself to colleagues who don't know who you are. I know we've obviously met.
My name is Tara Franca. I'm a planning officer for Wimbledon East Hillside residents, and I also represent Wimbledon Union on planning issues related to the town. We won the Future Wimbledon Design Competition for the Communities Award, and we had many. I mean, the alleys idea came from Weaver. It's just a little idea, but these things all build together, and it was such a wonderful experience to do Future Wimbledon for all of us, because there's a white paper, and initially we were sort of miffed that you gave us a little box to fill in for our points of view, but to be able to, I mean, it took a lot of effort, and a lot of people couldn't even begin to start. So that's why you got a number of people writing in, I want a concert hall. And by the way, it's not just like a cultural venue, because it's way more than that. It's it's a world-class performance venue, unique in London, and there's a need for that in the Southwest. So that in itself is a very big issue. But I wanted to I've got a couple points, because this is extremely important to those of us who've come out tonight. And as the data starts to come out for real, you're going to have a lot of kickback if you don't sort of bring us with you. The door shutter shouldn't come down today, now that we've got our 700 representations in. For one, the issue of material considerations, and you're the planning person? Oh, yeah. We have a number of issues going on right now in Wimbledon related to the environment. When I say environment, behind it's climate change, it's air quality, it's children breathing in at the muffler level, in a push chair, which there's so many young people in the borough.
You sound American with muffler.
Yeah. What do you call it? Exhaust.
Exhaust pipes, yeah. Speedy muffler thing.
So the transport hierarchy is a very fundamental thing, but environment and air quality and climate change. Forget all these other little things you've talked about tonight. Climate change is the single biggest issue facing our country, other countries, developing countries, the world. And Wimbledon people read a lot. We care. We're fortunate in some cases. We have a bit above average income, so that we have a little bit more time to invest in volunteer work and stuff. But this is a huge issue. And when you say, sir, that appeared low to you in the charts, it's because a factor analysis has not been done on environment, air quality, climate change as a factor. And I think that alone should be in the Wimbledon master plan, and indeed in everything in the borough. We should be doing sustainable development to the extent humanly possible. In Wimbledon, the developers will pay more to get the sites. They have more people willing to invest in Wimbledon because of the name and all, that it's already an established economic place. I was at FutureWimbledon yesterday. It's going on right now. It's the industry's annual get-together from all over the world. A lot of Chinese, but a lot of German manufacturing with the heat pumps, combined heat and power. Every, these estates, you should be doing combined heat and power like they're doing at Elephant and Castle. And, I'm just not feeling that we've got any advocates at the council now to push on sustainable development. So in planning terms, sustainability should be right at the top, that it's not a golden thread, it's a giant cord through any planning development it should be happening today. The transport hierarchy saying walking's number one. And if not walking, mobility scooters, mobility aids, walkers. We have a lot of older people in the Wimbledon area. They don't want to leave Wimbledon. They are downsizing, and we'll need that in the housing, which is interesting. We guys haven't had a chance to feed that into you. But the way the town center is that hump, it's an adverse camber. The footpaths are terribly uneven. They're not distinct from where the vehicles are. And I have helped so many older people, and they don't look necessarily like they're crippled, but they're having a hard time on the footpaths. And when you mention disability, this is critical. And this is the law for not just the country, but everybody. Any day, any one of us could be on crutches or worse. And I would say these are emerging themes of compassion for our fellow residents and visitors, that we should just have that at the forefront, not just say, do a quick focus group and build. It should be completely integrated. The last thing was that material considerations on planning do not really respect issues about air quality. And outside the bank buildings right now, it's 56 where 40 is the level of whatever, and they want to put this huge hotel, and they're saying there's going to be 0 new vehicles, and they're saying we already have so many, and so this will reduce the vehicles. And then you can't refuse it because air quality isn't a material consideration. I'm a novice. I'm not a planner. But it just doesn't seem right that we're trying to cram more and more and more and not making it sustainable, things we should do. I'm going to shut up on that and move on to my next point, which is the Wimbledon Society has been around for a very, very long time. Their membership has grown. I think they've doubled in the past couple of years because they realized there were a lot of older professionals. And most of them in the buildings and legal and structural engineering and that kind of thing. Urban, we have one of the country's top urban planners who has done the Vision 2040. And I understand, are you all counselors to here? You're all
yeah,
We're officers.
we're all councillors. Tara.
Everybody else, these two are
We're
officers.
officers.
Who are so the counselors are you all? Did you receive the Vision 2040 from the Wimbledon Society in the post? They posted.
I personally haven't, but I know colleagues probably around the table have known.
You haven't?
Personally, I haven't known.
You have not?
No.
Yeah, because they posted 60 copies to all the ward councillors.
It would have been sometime you would
At-
have received
at
it during
around
the
Christmas
consultation,
time.
So not recently.
No,
It was in the end of the year.
I'm a hoarder, so I probably would have had it if I had it. Maybe worth circling by email.
So Linda, did you get the copy?
It's not ringing a massive bell, so
Oh, when I heard this at a meeting recently at the Wimbledon Society, they've written a Vision 2040. They've posted, they've printed. Normally, we don't print
Yeah.
stuff off. They printed, they put a cover letter, their chairman signed everything, and they said they have not had a reply from a councillor other than, you know, the few that they've talked to in person. And
if you, by email, maybe, you
We
guarantee.
can send a link
Yeah.
to the place on the
because
website.
that is a document.
Was it the Women's Society that put this? Did they put it in that? I get their newsletter regularly.
Yeah, okay.
They didn't.
Did
It was
they
only
mention
finished.
that?
It was finished like the 1st of January, and they printed it because it had to be in by the 6th.
6th, I think, yeah.
And
Right.
they posted it, and I'm just shocked that the councillors don't even know that they have it. And this is a document.
Well,
that
it's
is-
not the no to have it. It's the fact that I know I didn't receive it.
Yeah.
I don't
So,
think I did.
maybe.
Yeah. Okay, I apologize,
Yeah.
but boy, am I glad to hear that because they'll have to reissue it. But it's almost like, you know, it did.
Send it electronically.
Anyway, Tara and colleagues are going to.
Send it electronically.
I'll send it.
Yeah.
It's on the website with all the other
Yeah.
responses.
The thing
It is on
is,
the website.
it is
Under their name.
you know, the Wimbledon Society's vision is done with architects and urban planners of the highest caliber for free for Merton because we are the major shareholders in Wimbledon. We care desperately about our community. We are a strong community. We're thankful that, and grateful that it operates like that. But we also, of course, we want to share the attributes that we feel make Wimbledon strong with the rest of the borough. But if we can't get these things built into the future Wimbledon design plan, we're actually looking at a civil parish for Wimbledon because we are so frustrated because it's just very difficult, and then little things like the post make it even more difficult. So, and then my last, just a technical point, but I started my career in market research, and this is not written by somebody who has worked in market research, because you don't start off a summary by positives, negatives, and other ideas. You have to say themes, and at that point you would just say air quality, the built environment, getting around. You wouldn't say transport even, because that's like a technical word, but getting around in the future is going to be different from getting around even 10 years ago. And so we really are urging you to do a themed, a factor analysis. It should be loaded into a program, and it should be professionally factored to make a future Wimbledon design. And indeed, you could do it for the whole borough too. So that's my view, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Our two other, indeed 5 other members of the public, do you have any additions or want to second what you've just heard? Or?
I have a couple of concerns, and I might ruffle a few feathers as usual. I apologise for that. Will the decision be based on the facts, on the evidence, or is it going to be a political decision? Because at the moment there are political members who are putting out lots of tweets and social media comments about what Wimbledon is going to look like, regardless of anything that's happening on the ground. And that's a little bit concerning. And also, just the way the document was presented, like a positive is, very little issue with very high buildings. Why is that a positive? It's for a lot of people that's a big negative. So it almost seems skewed already, just from the basic comments and the initial feedback, that it is going in one way or the other. And it's very concerning for all of us who really dearly love this borough and really dearly want to see the whole borough, not just Wimbledon, really progress and really think about community and really think about improving people's lives. I am quite emotional about this, but as you know, I'm quite passionate about it. So that's one thing. And secondly, could it be measurable and quantitative? So I would like to know who said what. Was it a landowner who wants very high buildings? Was it a resident? Was it a politician? It's important to know where these comments are coming from so that we can assess which way the development is going to go.
Can I just, on those, I'll answer if it's all right, those 2 questions. As we are a cross-party committee here, and we'll make recommendations to Cabinet. So that answers the first question. The second, in the document presented today, there is a list of those who've submitted, so you can see the type of people.
I know who submitted, but who said what? So the person who said very positive about very high buildings, who is it who said that? How many people said it? It needs to be quantitative.
But then you're walking into territory that well, firstly, all the consultation responses are posted online anyway, but then you're starting to walk into territory of naming that individual.
No, but they can say X amount landowner, X amount resident, X amount.
How do you know? So hypothetically, if a resident with a Hotmail email address emails a response in, how do you know that they don't own property?
Because most of the landowners, if they've actually put on the pie who responded to what, they already have the list of landowners, the list of residents, the list of association groups and so on. So the council already has that. They already have it, because on the pie chart they've actually said X amount responded were residents, X amount responded were landowners, X amount. So they already have that information. So when they sort of summarise it all, it needs to be clear.
What you're requesting sounds very finite. And what I'm trying to emphasise, probably very poorly, is that there is still grey, and that you still won't necessarily, an individual could again submit an individual response, but still have an interest outside of that.
Absolutely, but it'll give a general idea what the general view is, rather than, like Councillor Latif was talking about, there are higher buildings being planned for Wimbledon. And we know that they're actually breaking the sky ceiling of levels already existing. So there is a concern that there's a clash within planning between the future strategists and the actual planning department and the strategies that are and the policies that are being made. So the advice that the developers are getting is it's fine to go high right now in Wimbledon, on Warple Road, for instance, Barry House. We all know it's going up, 9 floors, over 28 metres, etc. on that particular stretch. There's Francis Grove, also that's going up quite high. So there is already a plan in motion for much higher heights, based on what? Do you see my point? So, Councillor Latif was saying this. They're saying it's the draft master plan, but are the council officers, are the planning officers actually advising them that it's okay to go higher?
First, I believe that is in relation to a review panel, which again isn't necessarily going on the planning committee itself.
That is correct, but we get to see the actual. We don't attend every single DRP. Only if it's public,
of course,
but it's mentioned in the agenda.
Of course, but officers have already testified to the fact of the dangers of developers making an assumption on a draft, which you and many others have made a comment on.
Sorry.
So
yes,
I think we've dealt with that, and it's at their peril if they decide to if they.
I really appreciated hearing Tara describe that to Mr. Latif. I have to say thank you, Tara. Warms my heart.
Yeah.
May I just say that thank you very much for making that point, though. There will be pretty much everybody who submitted to the master plan and the local plan, I'm sure, has their heart in the right place, that they want to represent their views, and that's great. I'm glad that you've put it up on the website, and I hope that we'll see all of our representations there. If the report doesn't look like an analysis of what we read there, we will hire a professional as a community, and we will have an independent review of those representations, because it is essential to us that we've gone to great lengths to get this together. And if Merton isn't hiring a research professional to do it, an independent analyst, which will keep it cross-party and keep it neutral, and also they will know how to do a factor analysis properly, and it'll be much more useful to you. This is where great ideas will come, and you will benefit 10 years down the line. Your plan will look lean, clean and sustainable, and you'll be very proud of it. But I am saying that if in the past we haven't been able to get our hands on the representations, and if indeed they're all listed, and it doesn't look like we're heading that way, we will have to hire somebody, and we will present it to you, in a different way, which I'd rather not go that way.
Just make sure you email it, don't post it, because
Appreciate the advice.
I just want to say something. I mean, I absolutely agree. What's required here is vision, and it's also about good practice. What's going on, not just here, but I mean, we all can get locked into what we know about, and therefore kind of replicate the same old thing all over again. But this is an opportunity. I think a local plan is an opportunity for us to be progressive and inventive and have real vision about it. And it is about getting good minds around the table and getting good views in. And that is really important. I mean, I know you're absolutely right about the climate and sustainability. I mean, it has to be factored in, and it has to be, absolutely strong message that we put out there. So I do think it's good to hear you talk like that. And I just think we do. I mean, my ex, I'm saying my husband, my husband was like a massive champion for this when he was on the council.
Is he the one on the bicycle?
Andrew Judge,
Yeah.
I mean, if he was sitting in here now, he'd be, passing you on the back for it. But it is about vision. We need vision if we're going to do something very well. And you can get a lot of people who, if you start tossing up all the individual comments here, and some of them said there's that's not it, is it? It's about recognising a good plan, a good idea, and getting behind it is what we're about here. But it's good. I think that it's a broad brush here that people have actually looked at it from so many different directions. Can I just also say about the east of the borough? What I don't think you have in on the Wimbledon side of it, that we have in the east side of it, is a massively strong community. It's very, very strong. We may not have Brains of Britain over there. We may not have all the degrees. We may not have all of it. But I would say what we do have is we have some very, very strong community stuff going on over there. We've got community centres, we've got very, very active counsellors. I mean, we are out every Sunday. I'm sorry, this sounds a bit weird. We're out every Sunday knocking on doors, finding out what people's concerns are. Every single week, all the way through the year. And as a result of that, and we're very strong with our meetings. I mean, it's, I've got a massive network of about 1,500 people I communicate with, and it's none of it's political. It's about getting information out there and, making people feel they're part of something.
Just what you were saying, it's peer to peer. So you knock on somebody's door and present some things, and then it ripples out.
Yeah.
And that is perhaps one of the biggest and most beautiful commonalities throughout the whole borough.
Yeah.
So I take that on board completely. And I think, did you hear now the policing, they're going to be putting ordinary people walking with the police to be looking and saying, I see that person here every day, exchanging cash. And that's the community helping for our own safety and security.
We've got very good interaction with our local police teams, and I think, all these things are very strong. So I think we've got good community networks on our side.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of expertise as well. I think if we all get together, we could come up with something really powerful.
I was listening to what you said, and I want to say that your area is not the only area with those problems, because you're talking about elderly people. Well, I live in St Helier, and I've represented it for 21 years. And quite often when you look at demographics, St Helier has been the area with the highest population of elderly people. And this is only one part of it. And I can tell you that myself and the now Mayor of Merton, we have been involved with a community group with elderly care, where we have meetings, we have groups in, we have transport people in to to sort of community areas like church halls and so on. And when I first took over the management back in 15, 20 years ago, the average age was 69. The average age now is 85. Yes, and a lot of the people in my area and in the Morden area and parts of Mitcham, they come to us with all the concerns that you've mentioned about, pavements needing repairing,
Right.
Yeah.
cars are running too fast so they're afraid to cross the road. We have to help people in wheelchairs, with disabilities. We have concerns about the local health service because they are very, one of the problems that they have, and we've all heard about St Helier Hospital and so on, but when you're at this high level, a lot of those elderly people do not have their own personal transport. So if one husband or wife is in hospital, they have to have transport to get there. And quite often, the ladies who work for me, they go visit. But it's very difficult to get about. So that's why they need the healthcare locally. They need all these things. They need help with getting around, taking them shopping. And I understand all of those problems. And I wouldn't want for myself what I would begrudge other areas. If I'm looking to improve the environment for those people in my area, I would expect to accept that you would be entitled to exactly the same in Wimbledon, exactly the same in Mitcham. And that's what we're looking at. All of these things, facilities for everybody.
Yeah, I just think that the community involvement has to also be, I'm a tree warden, and once in a while we have to go out and do stuff with our secateurs or our saws or bring our own bags of waterproofs and stuff. And with the disability issue, well, I should describe it as accessibility.
It's mobility of all kinds.
Yes, yeah, but this is a great opportunity for the Green Gym, where the 60-year-olds can help improve some things for the 80-year-olds, because we'll be 80 years old pretty soon.
Well, I'll be there before you.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.